What's the first word that pops into your head when you hear Donald Trump?
Pure evil. Donald Trump, he did bad things. He's like Hitler.
CNN interviewed kids about the 2024 election, and the results they found about some kids from Democratic families were absolutely stunning, and not in a good way. A wild CNN survey, another woke TikTok, and your feedback from yesterday's episode. All that and so much more is coming up on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest ideas from across our politics and across the internet, all from an independent perspective. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing and sticking around, and regardless, do hit that like button and do comment with your thoughts as we go along. I do read the comments and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. So up first, we've got to talk about this really fascinating study from CNN where they interviewed a bunch of 10 and 11-year-old kids about the 2024 election and found very stark differences in opinion between kids with Republican parents and kids with Democrat parents, with surprisingly, or perhaps not surprisingly, kids with Democratic parents having much more negative views about the other side and being much more close-minded and intolerant towards peers and classmates whose parents vote differently. Let's take a look at this first clip, which shows how kids with Democratic parents had much more extreme negative thoughts and feelings about Donald Trump than kids with Republican parents did about Kamala Harris.
Overall, the biggest finding, the children in the study were polarized, with what researchers call more extreme responses from the blue state kids than the red state kids.
Donald Trump, he did bad things. He's like Hitler.
He only wanted to be president so that he can just control everybody.
Trump is supporting January 6th now. I remember that January 6th, it was a bunch of Republicans believing Trump. I feel like they thought Trump was a god. People got arrested. I think one officer died afterwards. That was a big day.
The study found that these Democrat-leaning kids were about 9 times more likely to express negative emotions about Donald Trump than Republican-leaning kids were about Kamala Harris.
So there's more from this CNN report that's really interesting, but just a couple quick points first. This reminds me of a very famous quote from the late conservative columnist Charles Krauthammer, where he said, "Conservatives think liberals are stupid, but liberals think conservatives are evil." And I've encountered that a lot over the years in my kind of time in left-wing dominated spaces in college or in the LGBT community, where people on the right tend to look, and I'm generalizing here, this does not apply to every individual, but people on the right tend to look at liberals or progressives as idealistic, naive, wrong, dumb, foolish. But people on the left, at least a lot of them, tend to look at people on the right as evil, hateful, bigots, or somehow deeply fundamentally immoral. And I think that's a really interesting dichotomy, but a really alarming one because of the way that it strips people of their nuance and of their humanity and kind of flattens them and simplifies the world into good guys versus bad guys and closes you off, as you'll see, to meaningful relationships with other people. But it doesn't shock me to see, unfortunately, this is just where we're at in 2024, that people with kids with more progressive parents are teaching their kids to have this extreme negative view. I mean, one of the kids saying Trump is Hitler, you've got to be very detached from reality and be surrounded by a lot of hyperbole. And by the way, guys, I'm not critiquing the kids here. It's not their fault. And if anybody goes after the kids or criticizes them in the comment section, not only will I delete your comment, but I'll block you from the page because that's not okay. I want to talk about this because I think it's interesting and because I think it's important, but the problem here is the attitudes and ideas that parents are inculcating their children with. It's not these kids saying something silly like Trump is Hitler. It's not their fault. They're saying something nonsensical. They're 10 years old, for goodness sake, so do not go after the kids in any way. But these parents, at least some of these progressive parents, are fear-mongering their kids with things that are not true. For example, suggesting Trump is Hitler is just ridiculous and detached from reality. But also this other child appears to believe that a police officer was killed because of January 6th. That is not true. That was originally believed in the immediate aftermath, but it's later been confirmed by the Capitol Police that the officer who they thought died because of January 6th actually died due to natural causes. In fact, the only person who was killed on January 6th was a Trump supporter. as a direct result of the actual incident, which, to be clear, I don't support and I do condemn and I do think was an embarrassment for our country, but facts still matter. And it's not good if parents are teaching their kids alarmist things about his recent history that are just not true. That's just not good on either side. But this kind of hysteria and negativity is something of a theme uncovered by this study, as you'll see in this next segment, which really made me kind of sad, honestly.
Landrum was also curious about how kids saw their peers in the political divide.
So, do you think that the kids that live in those two houses would be friends with each other?
They can.
They can be?
There's no law breaking that.
It doesn't matter if you are different by skin color, or it doesn't matter if you are different by people, you can still be friends.
The study found that Republican-leaning kids were more open to visiting a Democrat-supporting household. But Democrat-leaning kids were about 5 times more likely to say they would not want to go to a pro-Trump house.
Would they be okay with you going over to somebody's house who is really supportive of President Trump?
No,
No? And why not?
because they know that he's not like black people, so they will not be happy to see me.
Would your family let you go over to somebody's house who's really supportive of Donald Trump?
No.
No, they wouldn't.
No.
And why not?
Because, like, my mom and dad don't like Donald Trump at all. Not a single bit.
Would you be okay going over to somebody's house whose family really likes Kamala Harris?
I think it'd be fine. It's just about the personality of the people.
Would your family be okay if you went over to somebody's house who really liked Donald Trump?
If I want to be real over here, so if I just went over there, I imagine be a good old argument or a fight. Maybe like a food fight or something.
So this honestly is just really sad to me. Some, not all, liberals and progressives, parents are truly teaching their kids to hate and distrust people just because they think differently. So much so that there's 5 times more of this kind of intolerance observed among the kids with Democratic parents than Republicans. And that's really sad because we should all be able to still be friends. Kids should still be able to play with each other regardless of who the parents vote for. That is just so insane and intolerant and close-minded and unnecessarily divisive and isolating. They're also doing this based on non-reality. I mean, the idea that just because somebody's parents vote for Trump, they must hate black people and a black kid wouldn't be welcome there. I mean, maybe that's true for a few out there, but the vast, vast majority of Trump supporters, that is absolutely not true. Most people who vote for Trump would not feel that way at all. And in fact, that viewpoint also totally erases the many millions of non-white people who vote for Trump or did in the past or are planning to this time. It's just extremely out of touch with reality. And again, it just relies on this total straw man villain of a boogeyman of how Republicans are that's just not rooted in reality. America has always worked because we can agree to disagree, because we can have very different values and beliefs, yet live side by side peacefully without trying to censor each other or squash each other into submission. But unfortunately, that attitude is going the way of the dodo bird on both sides, but especially on the progressive woke left. They don't want to convince people. They want to compel them. They don't want to coexist. They want to crush and destroy the people that disagree with them and force them to bend the knee into ideological submission. Or if they can't do that, cut them off and isolate them, get them fired from their jobs or isolated from their community, or otherwise use shame and coercion to try to force conformity. I'm really concerned about these attitudes being inculcated into the next generation, into these young, impressionable minds, because it's a fundamentally un-American attitude that I think threatens to tear at the ties and finally divide us to the point of no return if it isn't arrested, if it isn't challenged and stopped before these kids become adults and become voters and become leaders in different industries and walks of life. So this whole report, and I do want to give CNN some credit here for actually doing interesting journalism and publicizing the results, even though they weren't favorable to Democrats. Actually, credit for once for doing a good job. This whole CNN report just made me really sad and concerned about the future of our country, because this kind of intolerance and hatred and disdain for our neighbors isn't healthy and just can't continue if we want to keep this beautiful country and this wonderful experiment alive. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my daily segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Today, a new woke sexuality just dropped, and our friend Fuzz99 is here to explain it. Buckle up and get ready to get educated about what it means to be omnisexual. Let's take a listen.
What's omnisexual? And why the heck does their flag look like this? Well, people who identify as omnisexual fall under the bi umbrella, which means they share a lot of similarities with other identities that fall under the same umbrella, but are different. Hey. People who identify as omnisexual are attracted to all genders, just like pansexual friends. Hey. However, unlike pansexual friends, omnisexual friends are not gender blind. They recognize people for their genders and have a preference for who they end up with. Do they think everybody's hot? Hell yeah! They just might not want to date someone or end up with someone depending on what their gender is. Hey. The omnisexual flag was created in 2015 and consists of 5 stripes. The light blue and light pink stripes represent the gender spectrum. The pink stripe represents attraction to women and femininity. The blue stripe represents attraction to men and masculinity. And the purple stripe represents people whose genders fall outside of the binary and gender spectrum. Hey. And not every omnisexual friend is the same as another omnisexual friend, but we love all of our omnisexual friends.
So the comment section on this one did not disappoint. One person said, post this on IG Reels, because the comment section on Instagram Reels is savage. It is so offensive and so wild. And I'm not gonna lie, I go on there and look at the comments every time I see a funny reel. Another person writes, just put the fries in the bag, bro. Another person said, gonna lie, your content is amazing. Whatever you're on, nice spelling, bro. Whatever you're on, I need it instantly. Can we ban these in America, please? And literally cancer. So I don't support being mean or bullying this individual, Fuzz99, in any way. So please don't do that, at least not in my comment section. Let's be kind. But we can say that this content does not make sense and is not necessary. What this individual just described as omnisexual is just bisexual with extra steps. It's just bisexual dressed up in wrapping paper and rebranded into something new and woke and exciting. There are 2 human sexes, males and females. Sexual orientation is not about gender identity or how you feel inside. That's not what people are attracted to. It's about your biological sex. And so there are people who are attracted to the opposite sex, the same sex, or to both. And those would be bisexual people. And that's perfectly cool, perfectly valid. Live your life, love whoever you want, as long as you're all consenting adults and it's all above board, power to you. I couldn't care less. I'm fully supportive of that. And I think most people in America are. However, we don't need new fake names for it, right? It's just okay to be bisexual. You don't need to call it something else for extra victim points in the Oppression Olympics. And it's actually kind of bizarrely, in a weird way, accidentally regressive and kind of sexist and offensive, the way that Fuzz99 explains this imaginary concept. I mean, the blue is for boys and the pink is for red on the flag, or the pink is for girls on the flag. So you're doing sexism. You're literally just doing gender tropes and then calling it woke and progressive. That seems a little nonsensical to me, babe, but what do I know? I'm not up to date with the latest LGBTQIA2+ logo and identities, apparently. And I'm literally a part of this community, though it's really a category as a gay person, and I can't keep up. So I don't understand how everyday straight people are supposed to. Unfortunately, people like this are turning the LGBT community or category or whatever you want to call it into something of a joke, right? You can't just keep adding things. It's like the LGBT community is a clown car, and now we're on the 40th person getting in this tiny little car. At some point, you run out of spare compartments and the car is going to break or break down or bust. And you can't keep cramming things on to this ship without eventually sinking it and dragging it down. It's just, we've got to hold what we have. We finally got acceptance for gay, bisexual, and lesbian people. And now, instead of protecting that as it's actually starting to be eroded thanks to crap like this, we're going to just keep adding nonsense to it and undermine that progress and acceptance by presenting people with unnecessary things they can't understand because they're internally contradictory and not coherent logically. And then we're going to act shocked and victimized when support goes down. But actually, that's the predictable result of individuals like this and their rhetoric and their approach to these issues. So please, once again, I'm just begging these woke LGBTQ plus TikTokers to, if they actually care about this community of people and its acceptance, stop posting content. It does more harm than good. And especially stop posting it in this weird way that's clearly targeted towards children. I mean, the way this person, Fuzz99, talks and speaks is agonizing to listen to as an adult, but is clearly targeted to be for kids. And it's on TikTok, an app mostly for kids. And it's like, why are you trying to talk about sexualities to kids? That's weird and unnecessary and inappropriate. And unfortunately, it does also play into stereotypes and tropes that are not statistically true, that LGBT people are out to get your kids. That's not true if you look at statistics, but individuals like this are trying to do inappropriate stuff and message and market it towards children. And I really do resent that because they're giving fuel to the haters and they're playing into old, dangerous stereotypes knowingly or unknowingly, and they could confuse kids and actually do harm to them by exposing them to this kind of content that is nonsensical and also they may not be ready for, which is why you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't just be pushing this stuff on the internet out to lots of potential children on this app. You should be staying in your lane and letting parents have those conversations with kids when their kid is ready for it, not doing this weird kind of PSA activism marketed towards under 11s about sexuality lessons. That is creepy on many levels and totally unnecessary and counterproductive. But what do you guys think of this interesting video? Please do let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button to reward my suffering, because this one definitely shaved a couple points off my IQ. It fried some brain cells that I'll just never recover. So the least you can do is like the video. And now I'll wrap up today's show by reading a few of your comments from yesterday's episode before we take a break for the weekend. One person says, I've noticed that you recently changed your introduction. You used to say that you were talking from a center-right independent perspective, and in the last few episodes, you've simply been saying an independent perspective. I'm curious about why you changed your intro. Love the show. So the only reason I changed that is not, I still consider myself politically on the center-right. I just heard from some folks that if they're liberal-leaning or progressive-leaning, that immediately hearing I'm coming from a right perspective is off-putting to them or makes them defensive or whatever. So I want people to feel like this is an independent and open-minded space and community, not just for people who are right of center. So that's the only reason I changed that. It doesn't actually represent any sort of evolution in my political philosophy. Another person says, where I currently work, one of the new employees was non-binary, and as expected, she started getting angry that some of us forgot she was not, according to herself, a she. Needless to say, she was gone in less than a month. Not all Gen Zers are lazy, but it seems a lot of them are. Yeah, I never want to hold group stereotypes against any individual, so I would always give any Gen Zer a shot, and I would, I guess, give any non-binary person a shot, but I will say they, them pronouns on a resume, and am I stereotyping here a little bit? Yes, but that would be a red flag to me as an employer, that this person is not particularly logically coherent and is likely, although I guess not in 100% of the cases, a pain in the ass to work with. Another person writes, 21st century colleges were just expensive daycare centers. And apparently that's a quote from Futurama. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe I'll use that going forward, because it kind of is true, at least in some sense, in some places. Another person says, we survived the COVID epidemic, but I doubt we will survive the Delulu epidemic. Yes, that's such a good one. I might steal that, but yeah, we've got to stop the Delulu because things are getting out of control. If we don't figure out what's going on soon, I don't know where it'll all take us. Another person says, Brad, is your full name actually Bradley? I would have never assumed that. Yes, it is. It's Bradley Andrew Polumbo. So, but yeah, I just go by Brad. Another person writes, is it just me, or have you not done a damage control podcast, which I enjoy, for a month? Are you featuring more crazy LGBT TikToks on this show because you've abandoned damage control? Haven't abandoned it entirely. I'm so overwhelmed and so busy that I have taken a little bit of a hiatus on it for a little while because I just was doing too much and couldn't keep up. Another person says, if pronouns do not equal gender, then it's not misgendering to call you the wrong pronoun. I agree, and that's the contradiction I pointed out on yesterday's show. So at some point, these TikTokers are going to have to at least try to make a little bit of sense, but don't hold your breath waiting on that one to happen. All right, everybody, that is it for this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please do subscribe if you haven't yet. Do hit that like button before you go, and do comment with your thoughts. I do take the time to read the comments, so please do let me know what you think of the show and of me and of today's topics. I do love hearing from you guys, and with that, we'll talk again on Monday.